A police officer was walking on patrol one afternoon when he spotted a man strolling down the sidewalk with a fully grown tiger on a leash. The officer sprinted over and shouted, "Sir, what on earth are you doing?" The man smiled politely, "Just taking my tiger for a walk to the park." The officer, baffled, yelled back, "You can't do that. You need to take that tiger straight to the zoo." The man nodded. "Of course, officer, right away." Then he turned around and headed straight to the direction of the city's local zoo. Satisfied, the officer went back to his patrol, proud of having restored some sanity to his shift. 2 hours later, to his utter disbelief, he saw the same man again, walking down the street with the exact same tiger. The officer, now furious, ran up and yelled, "Hey, I thought I told you to take that tiger to the zoo." The man looked at him, confused, and said, "I did. We had such a great time. Now we're going to the movies together." Welcome to Acquisition Pro Tips, where we seek to demystify and break down the essentials of government contracting so you can navigate the process with confidence. I'm Josh, a warranted government contracting officer, and in today's video, I'm covering the basics and fundamentals of one of the contracting officer's most important assets, the contracting officer's representative. Did you know that for most service and construction contracts out there, someone's watching the contractor's every move? No, it's not the contracting officer. I'm talking about the contracting officer's representative, also known as the COR. If you're watching this video, you've more than likely been recently appointed as a COR. If this is your first time holding this illustrious title, and you want to better understand how the position works, well, you're in the right place. This video explains the process of becoming a COR, what responsibilities, roles, and authorities you have, and how to perform surveillance and direct oversight of contractor performance as it relates to the contract and the performance work statement. Before you can start performing COR duties, you need to complete training through the Defense Acquisition University, or DAU. There are several key courses that establish the foundation for your certification. If you're a Type A COR, someone handling lower risk or routine contracts, you'll start with CLC 106, COR with a mission focus. For those working on more complex or higher risk contracts, CLC 222, COR Online Training, provides the additional depth you'll need. All CORs, regardless of type, must complete DoD 20, Combating Trafficking in Persons, which reinforces the government's commitment to ethical contracting and human rights. If you're supporting operations in a deployed or contingency environment, CLC 206, CORs in a contingency environment, prepares you for those unique challenges. Once your online coursework is complete, you'll move into Phase 1 training. That's your in-person session with your Quality Assurance Program Coordinator, or QAPC. This is where you'll learn how surveillance and reporting works at your specific installation, how to fill out required documentation, and what your reporting timeline looks like. After Phase 1, your contracting officer can formally appoint you in PI's Joint Appointment Module, or JAM, and issue your official designation letter. In addition to this, you'll also need an endorsement from your direct supervisor and potentially your squadron leadership. Because this role holds quite a lot of responsibility, your reputation is kind of on the line. Phase 2 comes later, after the contract is awarded and you've been appointed. That phase is hands-on. It's when you sit down with your contracting officer and your functional team to go over the actual contract, the performance work statement, and the quality assurance surveillance plan. It's all about understanding exactly what your responsibilities for monitoring are. Here's your first acquisition pro tip of the video. When you begin Phase 2, create a simple surveillance calendar that lists when each inspection, deliverable, and report is due. The frequency and type of your surveillance you are required to perform will be highlighted within your COR designation letter in JAM. Planning ahead keeps you proactive instead of reactive when performance deadlines start stacking up. Now let's discuss the COR types. Type A, B, and C. Not every COR's role is the same. The type you're assigned to depends on the level of risk and complexity of the contract. A Type A COR typically oversees low-risk, routine work, like simple supply contracts or straightforward services. A Type B COR handles moderate risk requirements that need regular oversight and communication with the contractor. And a Type C COR takes on the most complex or high-risk contracts, such as performance-based services. For example, major IT efforts, medical services, or contingency operations, where technical involvement and documentation are critical. Acquisition pro tip number 2. No matter the COR types, hold a kickoff meeting with your contracting officer and contractor after award and before performance begins. Use that time to set expectations for communication, reporting frequency, and problem resolution procedures. You'll prevent confusion later and establish trust from day one. Once you're appointed, your learning doesn't stop. Every 3 years, CORs must earn 40 continuous learning points to stay certified. The idea is to keep your skills sharp and stay current with changing policy. You can do that through refresher courses at DAU. For example, CLC 231 on COR refresher training, CLC 233 on constructive changes, or CLC 42 on contract quality surveillance. Each one adds depth to your understanding of how oversight works in the real world. Acquisition pro tip number 3. Schedule one refresher course a year instead of waiting until your certification period is about to expire. Continuous learning works best when you immediately apply what you learn back into your daily COR duties. Now that you're trained and appointed, let's talk about the essential documents you'll need to be familiar with in your remedial action toolkit: the performance work statement, the quality assurance surveillance plan, and the tools you'll use to document and correct and monitor contractor performance. If you watched episode 7 of my videos, you already know that the PWS explains what performance objectives are. Your job now is to make sure that those performance objectives are achieved, verified, and properly recorded in accordance with the PWS's acceptable quality levels, or AQLs. The PWS describes the mission outcomes, performance standards, and measurable results the contractor is responsible for delivering. Instead of saying, the contractor shall mop the floors using a diluted bleach solution every day, it says, maintain floors in a clean and glossy condition. Your responsibility as a COR is to ensure that the results meet the contract's requirements, not to tell the contractor how to do their job. The Quality Assurance Surveillance Plan, or QASP, explains how you'll measure that success. It outlines what you'll inspect, how often you'll do it, who will conduct the inspections, and what methods you'll use. It also defines the acceptable quality levels, those minimum thresholds that tell you when contractor performance is satisfactory and when it's not. When performance falls below those levels, you use your oversight tools: the Corrective Action Report, or CAR, the Performance Assessment Report, or PAR, and the Customer Complaint Report, also known as the CCR. The CAR is your formal method for identifying and fixing deficiencies. It describes what requirement wasn't met, when it occurred, and how it will be corrected. Always coordinate your CARs with your contracting officer before issuing one. It keeps authority where it belongs. The PAR is your formal evaluation of contractor performance at the end of the period of performance or contract completion. It feeds directly into CPARS, which every federal agency uses to assess past performance when awarding future contracts. And the CCR, the Customer Complaint Report, is how end users and customers report issues directly to you or the QAPC. You verify each complaint, determine whether it violates the PWS, and make sure the contractor resolves it within the required time frame. Acquisition pro tip number 4. Track patterns across your CARs, PARs, and CCRs. A single issue might be an anomaly, but recurring themes point to systemic problems. Sharing those insights with your CO helps address the root cause instead of just the symptoms. Now that we've talked about how your documentation supports future contracts, let's take a closer look at where all that performance information actually lives and how it shapes a contractor's reputation across the government. As a COR, your ongoing oversight is documented through SPM, the Surveillance and Performance Monitoring Module, which is part of the Procurement Integrated Enterprise Environment, or PI. SPM is your primary workspace for recording contractor performance throughout the life of the contract. It's where you document every inspection, site visit, and observation, whether that's monthly, quarterly, or at whatever frequency your designation letter requires. Each SPM entry reflects your objective assessment of how the contractor performed against the standards laid out in the performance work statement and quality assurance surveillance plan. You'll record whether those deliverables met acceptable quality levels listed within the services summary section of the PWS and QASP. Describe any deficiencies and note corrective actions that were taken. The key here is accuracy and clarity. Instead of writing contractor met expectations, explain how they met them. For example, during the September inspection, all 12 HVAC units were serviced per the PWS. Preventative maintenance logs were completed and met 100% of scheduled requirements. That level of detail doesn't just make your surveillance more credible, it gives your contracting officer the evidence they need to make informed decisions when exercising contract option years, contractor invoicing, or potential issues down the road. All of that data, your inspections, comments, and observations flows upwards. At the end of the performance period, your CO uses that information to help complete their annual evaluation assessment in the Contractor Performance Assessment Reporting System, or CPARS. CPARS is the government-wide system used to rate a contractor's quality, schedule, cost control, management, and business relations. Your surveillance data and SPM becomes the factual foundation for those ratings. And here's why that matters. CPARS evaluations are visible to every federal agency. When contractors bid on future work, during source selection to help establish a responsible and viable contractor, and to assess past performance risks, strong surveillance documentation from you translates into fair, accurate ratings and helps ensure the government continues working with vendors who consistently deliver. So the link between SPM and CPARS isn't just administrative, it's strategic. What you record today directly influences how that contractor is viewed across the entire acquisition community tomorrow. Acquisition pro tip number 5. Make your SPM entries meaningful. Don't just summarize what happened. Capture the impact of contractor performance on the mission. Statements like, the contractor delivered ahead of schedule, minimizing downtime for flight operations, or delayed equipment delivery caused a 1-week slip in maintenance readiness. Help decision makers understand the real-world effects of performance. That context turns your oversight into insight, establishing excellent continuity for other CORs and COs that have to conduct annual CPARS evaluations on inherited contracts they might not be familiar with. Being a COR comes with both authority and responsibility. When you accept a COR appointment, you're representing the United States government, and that means your integrity must be beyond question and above reproach. Every decision you make, every observation you record, and every interaction you have with a contractor reflects on the government's credibility. That's why it's critical to stay impartial, avoid even the most suspect appearance of a conflict of interest, and never accept gifts, favors, or hospitality from contractor personnel, no matter how small they may seem. If you ever find yourself unsure about what's appropriate, the Defense Acquisition University offers excellent guidance on this matter in course ACQ or AC 30, Overview of Acquisition Ethics. It walks through the laws, standards, and real-world scenarios that define proper conduct between government and contractor personnel. And here's the golden rule for every COR. If a contractor asks you to approve something that feels questionable, maybe it's outside the scope of your authority, or it just doesn't sit right with you, your answer should always be, I need to check with the contracting officer first. That one sentence protects you, the contract, and the mission. Acquisition pro tip number 6. You should always keep a simple log of every meaningful interaction with the contractor, like site visits, technical discussions, or performance reviews. If something ever seems unethical, illegal, or dangerous, contact your contracting officer immediately. They'll determine whether the issue needs legal involvement or even a referral to the Air Force Office of Special Investigations for further review. Let's talk about the partnership between the contracting officer and the COR. You and your CO share the same mission, ensuring the government receives exactly what it paid for, no more and no less. But your responsibilities and authorities are very different. The contracting officer holds the only legal authority to bind the government to a contract. That means signing, modifying, or terminating contracts, approving payments, and making sure final decisions all fall squarely on the CO's shoulders. As the COR, you're the technical expert and the on-ground representative. You observe, inspect, and evaluate contractor performance. You verify whether deliverables meet the requirements in the performance work statement, and you report your findings, but you don't have the authority to change the contract or direct the contractor beyond what's already written. This separation of duties isn't a limitation, it's a safeguard. It ensures oversight is balanced, documentation is clear, and accountability is shared across the acquisition team. A healthy CO and COR relationship is built on communication and trust. The CO relies on you for real-time performance data, early warning of potential issues, and honest assessments, not sugar-coated reports. In return, you rely on the CO for contractual guidance, authority, and support when enforcement becomes necessary. When that relationship works, contracts run smoothly. When it doesn't, issues fester, performance suffers, and the mission takes a hit. So what does good communication actually look like? It's proactive, not reactive. You don't wait until the end of the month to deliver bad news. If a deliverables at risk or a contractor's slipping on performance, you raise it early and factually. It's also documented. Every significant exchange, whether it's a technical clarification, an inspection result, or a performance concern, it should be logged. That shared documentation builds transparency and protects both parties if questions ever arise later. Finally, it's respectful. The CO isn't your supervisor, and you're not their subordinate. Your teammates. The best CO and COR pairs act as extensions of each other, balancing legal authority with technical insight to protect both the mission and the taxpayer. Acquisition pro tip number 7. A strong COR keeps their CO informed before they're ever surprised. Schedule short, recurring updates. Even if it's just a 10-minute sync once a month. Discuss inspection trends, contractor communication, and any early warning signs. Those quick touch points build confidence, prevent misunderstandings, and keep your acquisition team mission aligned. Now that we've talked about the CO and COR relationship, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, how your work as a COR fits into the full life of a contract. Every federal contract goes through a predictable cycle: the award, performance, and then the closeout. But between those stages are key actions, like contract modifications, option years, requests for equitable adjustment on behalf of the contractor, and sometimes even terminations. As a COR, you're not the one executing those actions, but your input often drives them. For example, when a contractor requests a modification to adjust pricing or delivery terms, the CO looks to you for the technical justification. Your documentation, inspection notes, performance records, and correspondence becomes a crucial piece of evidence that supports or rejects that request. The same goes for option year decisions. Before the government exercises an option year, meaning a continuation of the contract's performance period beyond a single year, the CO reviews your surveillance reports and past performance data to determine whether the contractor's work justifies continuing the relationship. If your reports are detailed, factual, and timely, they make that decision easy. If they're missing or vague, it can delay the process or even jeopardize the mission. You'll also play a vital role during CPARS evaluations, where your assessment helps shape the contractor's past performance record across the entire federal landscape. Those evaluations follow contractors for years and influence whether they're eligible for future awards. And speaking of future awards, this is where your documentation really starts to pay off. When a contract approaches the end of its performance period, the data you've collected feeds directly into recompetition planning. Your insights help the acquisition team build a stronger performance work statement, refine the quality assurance surveillance plan, and develop a more accurate, independent government cost estimate when creating future requirement packages. In other words, your work today directly improves how the next requirement is written, evaluated, and awarded. So even though your focus might be day-to-day oversight, remember, you're not just monitoring a contract, you're shaping the next one. And here is your final acquisition pro tip for the video. As you close out your contract, include a lessons learned section in your COR file. Capture what worked, what didn't, and recommendations for the next iteration. Those insights become gold for the next acquisition team. The COR's job might not always make the headlines, but it's one of the most vital roles in federal acquisitions. specifically services and construction contracts. You're the bridge between the contractor and the mission, the person who ensures the government gets what it paid for, when it needs it, and to the quality it deserves. If you enjoyed this video and you want to support the channel, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another acquisition pro tip.